Welcome back, class. Mr. Offer. Now we're in History 1301. This is the 8-week course. And we're on Section 3. Remember, we had a little bit of confusions with Section 2, so now we're lined up. We're on Section 3. In Section 3, this is going to be one of your longer sessions. We're going to take 5 lecture series to cover this. Okay, so this is going to be kind of a long one, so kind of bear with me. This is the colonial life in the 17th century. So let's kind of start this off. Now remember, guys, I'm always telling everybody, remember you've got to access that PowerPoint. As you see me talking, I'm always looking at my PowerPoint. In fact, you probably see me holding this. This is a clicker. I'm actually clicking slides and looking at the PowerPoint. So let's kind of get straight into this. This is going to be a 5-part series. This is going to be kind of long. So let's start off with talking about the American Indian. You know, when the American Indian, when the Europeans first got here, remember we cover that with a broad brush, what we mean by a European. It's usually your French, your Spanish, or your English. When the Europeans get here, especially your English and your French, they really depend upon that American Indian. The American Indian helps them stay alive. They were not prepared when they came to this continent. That's just simply put. They came here up on that East Coast. They settled in on one of the worst times you could have, when winter was setting in, and it's like everything was against them. On top of everything else, they had a really brutal winter. So the American Indians helped keep them alive. What quickly you see that will happen, guys, is a relationship between the English and the American Indian soon it evaporates. And mainly it's a couple of things. The Europeans wanted the American Indians to convert to their religion, and the American Indian had their own gods. Their gods weren't the same as the European gods. They might have worshipped the sun or something of that sort. Most American Indians had never heard of the King James Bible. They did not know Christianity as it existed in the European continent. Okay, and the Europeans didn't think they were very civilized. And the last thing, there's 3 things, and I always put 3 things, guys, that will include the decline of this. Number one, we talked about. Number one, remember, the American Indian really rejected Christianity. Number 2, they really weren't civilized. And number 3 is going to be the fact that the Europeans believe they're racially superior to the Indians. So that's going to, and the American Indian will have a rough time. This is the beginning of a very long track that we will talk about through this course. A lot of Indians, entire tribes were wiped out by disease, and because of that, Indians were then brought by these Europeans, and a lot of them were, like, if you had an Indian woman, her husband was dead, they'd take that Indian woman and she would be married to a slave. So then you got the poor slave. He's already a slave, and now she is a slave, and therefore their children. So a lot of them are brought into slavery. As you go through the PowerPoint, guys, anything in red, I'm looking at it, mercantilism, the economic theory holding that the colonies were economically subordinate to the mother country. If you see something in red, you can almost guarantee that's a test question. Okay. As we go on here, guys, and I'm going very quickly, we're talking about when the English come, they settle in. Like I said, the English were very unprepared, for what they were going to find. The last group we're going to talk about is the pilgrims. Remember, we've been talking about those pilgrims. Remember, we go back to that imaginary 4th grade class, and all those little kids would tell you, man, the pilgrims were the first ones here, which they weren't, but, that's what our little 4th grader is going to believe. So our pilgrims were a group of separatists. They did come over here for religious freedom. That is true. The interesting thing about the pilgrims is several things. You have the Mayflower pact. They were the first group that actually come up with some rules and guidelines. You got to remember, guys, before the Pilgrims, all the other groups that came here, they were coming under different European companies, like the London Company. They brought these people here. They were merchants. They were brought here to try to produce crops and money for different European companies. These people are totally different. The last thing I want to mention about the Pilgrims before we run out of time is I do think they were a really neat group of people. When they get over here, the majority of them will die. They get over here, disease and everything else. But the one thing that most people do not know about the Pilgrims, and this is a really quick, quiz on the Pilgrims, you might say, is the Pilgrims, when we think of Thanksgiving, that event did happen. It does not happen every year after that. But there was a particular tribe, and the Pilgrims and this Indian tribe did make peace, and these Indians did help them with their knowing how to plant crops, how to survive. But the part of history that's very interesting is these Indians wanted something in return. And this is where Mrs. Johnson's little fourth grader probably does not know this. This Indian tribe was in war with another tribe, and the Pilgrims had weapons. They had weapons like the American Indian never seen before. And they're going to wipe out that tribe. We'll come back and talk more about that.